with them, such as the person that released that information, which is totally incorrect and inaccurate.
General, the Nigerian Air Force has vowed to pound the bandits. Does this not portray the military as being reactive rather than proactive?
Well, people will assume so, but it is not the way it is. If you look at the myriads of the security challenges in the country, they are complex, they are they are huge, and they kept on evolving as time goes on. And therefore, the military now are fully involved in joint operations. The Air Force, the Army, and the Navy, and other security agencies. So when things happen in that kind of thing, everybody brings what he or she has in stock to ensure the accomplishment of the task. So in this instance, the special forces were busy routing out these criminal elements, and they encountered ambush. They were trying to repel it, and of course, after repelling, they were able to gather their casualties and call for assistance and reinforcement and casualty evacuation, as it were. And quite unfortunately, the wounded were evacuated, and unfortunately, the aircraft, crashed. So it is not as if the armed forces or the security forces are resting on their own. They are doing the best they could under difficult circumstances. You need to understand also it is rainy season, and some of these areas, they are hardly accessible. In fact, it is to the credit of the armed forces, beyond their equipment holding, they evolve certain things using motorcycle to track these criminal elements. And of course, you cannot successfully deal with it without timely and accurate information. And that is why, if you even look at the release by the Nigerian Air Force, they are calling for continuous support. Because there is no way, no matter how it is, without the support of the people, the security forces could not achieve much or the desired effect. Therefore, people owe it as a point of duty to assist. And whoever is involved, in terms of giving information or cooperating or supporting these criminal elements or in any way assisting them, she or he should be exposed so that the right, they will be made to face the full wrath of the law. And more so, if you look at it, some of the state governments have even enacted some laws, making banditry and kidnapping almost, I think, capital offense. It's just that the political will to prosecute some of these people is not there. But that notwithstanding, we owe it as a point of duty to help in dealing with this in dealing with these security challenges. And how do we do that? When you see something, you say something. Most of these criminal elements, they live along with the people. And, some of our people, when I mean our people, Nigerian citizens, assist them. Sometimes inadvertently, because they don't even know. Somebody will come with supposedly with the best of intention, asking questions, not knowing that he or she has ulterior motives till when they struck, then you understand. Take, for instance, we have had an instance just recently in Zamfara State when people, the bandit or the kidnappers dress in a hijab. Hijab is a Muslim dressing for, female. Under normal circumstances, there is this compassion and understanding when you see a female you would like to assist. I don't know the details, but the truth is that these are the kind of things. So somebody, for a man to go and wear hijab, definitely he must have procured the hijab from somewhere, either from a fellow man or from a lady. So people should have asked question, what do you need hijab for? Unless, of course, if you are in consent with them. So, but beyond that, there are so many. And the concept of this war economy, an economic system that revolves around complex situations, is real. There are some people that supply them with weapons, people supply them with logistics, people supply them with drugs, and so on and so forth. Where are they? Why don't people expose them? But beyond that, again, we have to think of how best will the government equip and support the security forces to do the best they can. So even if you give information, they can act on it immediately without being reactive, as you were saying. So basically, it's a collective responsibility. It is not just the military or the security forces alone. It's a collective responsibility. And I'm so happy. The new mantra is that we're moving towards a whole society approach to security, in dealing with security challenges in this country, in which each and every one of the components of Nigerian society has a role to play.
So let's talk about ambushes suffered by the military. What do we blame for this?
What do we blame for the ambush?
Yes.
I'm sorry, I'm not getting you.
I'm talking about the ambushes suffered by the military. What do we blame for this?
Well, usually there could be a lot of reasons. I've just been talking about the issue of people, giving out information or disposition of the security, our military and security forces among the communities. And I have cited an example of a particular individual that was so eager to break the news, alleging that the bandits, brought down an aircraft, as if he was there or as if they planned the attack with him and so on. So basically that is it. And I have made mention of the fact that there is war economy. War economy, it includes informants, people that, give out information either knowingly or unknowingly to these criminal elements. And I can tell you, one of the things that was shocking to me when I was deployed in the Northeast way back in 2014, when we flew in from Yola at Maiduguri International Airport. That time it was only, the military that flew in and out of Maiduguri. And I saw someone, being questioned. And I was wondering why. And of course, the next thing was that individual, his job, he was a Boko Haram member, that his job, he had been stationed at the airport. His job was to report, arrival or takeoff of military aircraft so that he can warn. And of course, in most instances, even in the Northeast and, Northwest and North Central, in most instances, they have even nicknames for some of the military, columns and equipment. By the time they mention Konkuru, definitely it must be either an APC or an RPG. And APC or EMRA. So the criminal elements are being warned about that, and they are being assisted with such information, to plan against the military. And in these instances, they tend to, deceive them. If, for instance, there is an attack towards the eastern part, then you will receive another call that it was in the western part. And by the time you are trying to respond, actually they are either in the southern or, in northern flank. So that is what has always been happening. And unfortunately, all these things are happening with the knowing or tacit approval of some unscrupulous elements in the society. So you can blame it on a lot of factors. And of course, if you are planning for ambush, you have to be in a vantage position. You have to look at a position where you are supposedly adversary is in a weaker position to respond. Possibly, you select a terrain that is not attainable, and even if you ambushed him, he or she might not be able to escape. There are so many other things, killing zone, and I don't want to go into the details. But for this one, I cannot say precisely unless we await the outcome of the investigation, which I'm sure will be made known in due course to know exactly what happened. But I think the most important thing here, we should be in the state of mourning, having lost these precious lives. May their soul continue to rest in peace, and encourage and support their families, so that they can bear this irreparable loss with so much fortitude and, bearing in mind that they did not die in vain. They died in the course of defending the territorial integrity of this country, in the course of defending humanity to ensure that we live in peace and, in peace in this country. So basically that's what should be occupying us. But of course, the military and the security forces and the authorities should be concerned actually in investigating and unraveling the circumstances that brought that, so that lessons are learned, so that we can avoid future reoccurrence. But most importantly, there should be constructive engagement of the society, particularly the host community where these criminal elements hibernate.
So talking about avoiding future recurrence, this resurgence of attacks in Niger State have been blamed by the governor on illegal mining. Why is this brewing so much violence?
Well, if you look at it, it is not just Niger State. Even in Zamfara State, with the discovery of the gold deposit, you can see the conflicts have been protracted. And simply because there are certain vested interests, including foreigners, And unless we look at it critically and ensure that we sanitize the mining of these precious mineral resources, we'll continue to have problems. And why? Because people look at it as a means of livelihood, but it is not even that. There are some people that are taking and do advantage of it, particularly foreigners, arming groups, and so the conflict is ongoing. And we need to address it as part of addressing the root causes of these security challenges being experienced. But most importantly, I always say that we should improve also in the issue of good governance. Let's look at all the security challenges. They are happening in a particular community, in a particular local government, in a particular state. Is the local government system working? So bulk of the security challenges, when they happen, it is either the state or the federal government that is to be blamed. What happened to the local government? So I call on the state governors, especially that we have newly elected ones, they should please ensure that the local government system is up and doing by ensuring its autonomy. So that some of the security challenges that are local, they can easily be dealt with without taking them to, lumping them on the state government, and the state government that is always overwhelmed, calling on the federal government. And of course, the federal government in itself is being overstretched, because you cannot pretend all the, nook and crisis of this country. So the people need to give a helping hand. And they cannot do that if the local government is not working optimally.
So a new administration is in place, and of course the country cannot afford to be having this kind of killings. What do you think should be done to address this head on?
Well, I have just mentioned one aspect, the issue of the local government. Of course, you have to look at the issue of, one of the staying powers of the Nigerian society. Even though they kept on saying they are trying to remove population as among the indices of, national power. But the most important thing is the human resources that God has blessed us with. To what extent are we effectively utilizing these human resources? That's the big question. And more so, if you look at the total population of Nigeria, assumingly 200 million, out of that 200 million, almost 65 or to 72%, they are all youth. To what extent have you constructively, engaged the youth so that they can, contributing to national development positively? And if you look at the statistics also, bulk of the security challenges, are being perpetrated by the younger ones in the society, simply because of some reasons. Agreed, you cannot give an excuse for a criminal, because I'm yet to see a retired thief that he said, oh, I have done this, so let me retire today. Oh, I have been deprived, let me go and steal so that I can set up a legitimate business. I haven't seen. So a criminal is always a criminal. Yes, but that notwithstanding, we should create an enabling environment in which we will engage our teeming population, particularly the younger ones. We are living in very difficult times, where families are finding it very difficult to take care of their loved ones. So definitely moral values and standards are being compromised. People are getting into crimes and what have you. So let us address these socio-economic challenges and then improve in good governance, create employment opportunities, and at the same time, make sure that Nigerians are properly sensitized on the importance of contributing the best to ensure that Nigeria is a secure society. It might not necessarily that you go into, you take up employment in the armed forces. No, even an average citizen, by seeing something and saying something, by reporting things to the appropriate authorities, and by you living up to standard of an average citizen, because it is not just enough to enjoy the privileges of being a citizen, there are also associated responsibilities and civic duties. So these are the issues. But of course, the government has to take a leading role in some of these things. And we hope and pray that these issues will be addressed so that we can be able to, we should not be able to have those who are involved in criminality will not have any excuses. Just like the police used to say, do not encourage the criminals. So we should not encourage those with low moral standard to be involved into this kind of thing, or people should lure them in. And I can also give you an example. We are talking about the local government system earlier on. Quite a number of people, what they need actually is not even much. Somewhere where I came from, 50,000 naira is more than enough to set someone to start a business, legitimate one that he can take care of his family. But unfortunately, where do you get the 50,000 naira? If you want to go to bank for a loan, you know, the interest rate is very high. And in fact, there are people that, you know, will take and do advantage of these people. You know, particularly the bandits, they buy tricycles, they buy motorcycles, and at the same time, in return for certain things like information and what have you, even set people up in business. And the government should come into play so that such people that need such things are given, you know, without, you know, the criminal elements inducing them, you know, to commit untoward things. So there are so many things: improving good governance, you know, ensuring the local government system work, creating an enabling environment where there is justice. You know, an average person who is, well, so to speak, that an average person will have a greater sense of belonging. If anybody touches him, he has a recourse to the arbiter, which is the judiciary. So, you know, strengthening the institutions also is equally very important, alongside all those things that I've mentioned, and there are so many more.
Thank you so much, General. I've been speaking with a strategic communications expert and former Director of Public Relations, Nigerian Army, retired Brigadier General Sani Kukasheka. Thank you so much for your perspectives on the program tonight. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you so much, too.
Now, let's take a short break, and when we return, it will be time to speak with our second guest of the day, who is the Chief Executive Officer of the Center for the Promotion of Private Enterprises, Muda Yusuf, for discussion on Naira's struggle against the dollar. Please stay with us.
Doubt and fear doesn't occur at the canvas, it shows in the canvas. It shows the conation of raw earthen material slabbed, stroked, and molded at a pace provided by the doubt and fear. Every move way in the struggle of one to the other, merging the past to the present, brushstrokes of colors seen but not known. For when the wailing stops, the pieces settle down in abject beauty, erected for a century of a century. Speaking, advocating, protesting as the arts are meant to be.
It's not your regular show. It's an online interactive session where I will share my views on the everyday issues that cut across politics, security, health, current affairs, governance, and so much more. I am passionate about our country. I choose to support any conversation geared towards building a better Nigeria. I am Babajide Kolade Otitoju. Join me every Saturday on TVC News YouTube channel as I discuss Nigeria and the world at large on the show, Issues with Jide.
Welcome back. You're still watching Politics Tonight, digging beyond the headlines. And now to our interview with the second guest of the day. I'm joined by the Chief Executive Officer of the Center for the Promotion of Private Enterprise, Muda Yusuf, for discussion on Naira's struggle against the dollar. Thank you so much for joining us, sir.
Thank you very much, Jumoke. My pleasure to be with you.
Yes, same here. So we're going to start this conversation this way. When the new administration unified the Forex window and floated the Naira, I mean, we thought the free fall of the Naira will reduce. Why does the value of the Naira continue to fall?
Well, quite a number of factors have been responsible for the rapid depreciation in the exchange rate. The first is the challenge of speculative activities. There are quite a number of individuals and corporate entities that are making demands for dollar in the economy. Not all of them are engaged in real economic activities. There are quite a sizable number that are making demands for dollars, not because they want to import anything, not because they have any business they are doing, but because of speculative activities. For some, that is an arena for business. You know, they speculate on the currency in the belief that once this currency depreciates, they'll be able to sell and make some margin. Some also speculate on the currency just to get the currency and have it as a store of value. And there are also instances, of course, of people who have illicit funds. You know, and you know the level of corruption in the economy, and some of these illicit funds can be substantial. And when you have a market that's a bit liberal, where all manner of people can come in and make demands, such illicit funds also find their ways into the market. And for somebody who did not work for the money, has a lot of slush funds, they could buy the dollar at any rate. So these are some of the factors, and of course we have the backlog of unmet foreign exchange demand. Under the previous dispensation, we had huge backlog of forex demand that were not met. An example is the outstanding payment to the airlines, which is about $800 million, which is the highest, according to IATA, is the highest anywhere in the world. So all of these pressures coming together at the same time, you know, exerted an enormous pressure on the foreign exchange market. And of course, in the midst of all of this, the government also had to, you know, service the Euro bond. That is $500 million. You know, at a time when there was also limited capacity by the central bank to intervene in the foreign exchange market. So basically, these are the factors. And of course, again, just to add, is the fact that because we have deregulated the downstream sector, and because the private players in the petroleum downstream now have the liberty to import petroleum products, by the time you also put that demand on the market, you can imagine the enormity of the pressure. So there's a huge pressure of demand on the foreign exchange market, and the capacity to meet that demand is quite weak. So that is what has led to the weakening of confidence and to, you know, the very intense speculative activities on the currency.
So what's also responsible for the arbitrage gap, which now stands at about 206 naira to a dollar, if not higher?
Well, the challenge is that, first, when there is a breakdown or a deterioration in the level of confidence, there's always a rush on the currency, almost like a run on the currency. And because not all the demands can be met at the official window, which is the I&E window, there's a lot of spillover to the parallel market. And the more you have this spillover, the higher the pressure on the parallel market and the higher the depreciation in the currency in the parallel market. So increasingly, as confidence deteriorates, more and more people are going to the parallel market because the demand cannot be met at the official window. So basically, it's a question of the capacity to meet demand and the capacity to sustain confidence. Because not all the people who are demanding the currency need the currency immediately. Some need it to store, some need it to, you know, launder money and all of that. So all those factors are there. So that is what has led to the widening gap between the official window and the parallel market window. But I must say that this policy direction is the way to go. Of course, we needed to define the limit, which is what the central bank has done. We cannot afford to leave the currency entirely to market forces or to freely float the currency. From time to time, the apex bank has a responsibility to intervene to stabilize. And if you look at the rates over the last 1 month or so, the rate in the official window has been fairly stable. The current concern now is the widening gap between the official window and the parallel market window, which of course could create distortions and create arbitrage opportunities. And I'm aware, going by what the acting central bank governor said yesterday, that something is being done to address this confidence crisis in the foreign exchange market.
But can we really stop round tripping?
Well, round tripping, first, there has to be a lot more vigilance in the market. Because all over the world, even in the most advanced economies, you are not allowed to just demand for foreign exchange just anyhow. There is need for closer monitoring, and there is need for, much stronger institutions to ensure better credibility in the entire ecosystem of our foreign exchange management. That is important, because you need to control some of these things. If people are making demands that are suspicious, you should call them out. They should be called to question. And there has to be consequences. I'm aware that under the previous, the suspended CBN governor, there are quite a number of accounts that were suspended, but recently some of those accounts were unblocked. I don't have the details, but it is possible that some of those accounts were involved in all these shady deals in the foreign exchange market. So there is need for a lot more vigilance, even as we pursue this market-led strategy of managing the currency. There is need for vigilance to ensure that those who are demanding the currency, whether in the parallel market, the bureau de change, or in the official window, are genuinely demanding it for concrete economic activities, not for speculative activities. So that is important. Then, of course, the way to also reduce this is to ensure that we are able to build confidence and we're able to meet demand in the official window. If that is happening, the need for demand to spill over to the parallel market will be reduced. And if there's a reduction in pressure in the parallel market, the gap will continue to narrow. I mean, the first 2 or 3 weeks of the introduction of this new foreign exchange management, we didn't see any serious gap. In fact, there was a time when the official rate was even higher than the parallel market rate. But suddenly, we saw this surge in demand on both the parallel market and the official window, and at that point, we began to see this kind of swing or deterioration in the exchange rate. So some of these things also need to be properly investigated to ensure that all these extraneous variables that are distorting the assumptions and all the policy arrangements, all those things are put in check. That is very important.
Dr. Yusuf, the CBN has vowed to crack down on currency speculators. How will you advise the Apex Bank to go about this?
Well, it's to use intelligence, to use data, and to monitor the flow of funds within the system, to monitor those who are demanding for this currency. It has to be effectively monitored. And once there's evidence that these things are driven by speculative activities, or there's evidence that some of these funds that are being used are illicit funds that people cannot account for, there has to be consequences. I'm sure that is what led to the closure of some accounts. Well, the CBN now has reversed some of those things, but they need to go back and check properly so that you don't unleash all these illicit funds and these sharp practices on the market. So that is what I think the CBN can do, in addition to ensuring that we sustain confidence, because at the heart of all of these things is confidence. If we're able to instill confidence that if you need the currency, you get it, in the official window, you don't have to bribe anybody or something. If you have that, then less people will be going to the parallel market and the gap will narrow. And I'm happy that recently, just this evening, I had a news that the NNPC has been able to strike a deal with Afrexim Bank of $3 billion to be able to support, to stabilize the market. That is good news as far as I'm concerned, because it is not all the time that you go borrowing to IMF and all of that, or to the Eurobond market. If you have credible companies, you have strategic assets that you can leverage on to raise funds at a more concessionary rate, that is also a solution. So with that, we are likely to see a reduction in some of these speculative activities and a restoration of some level of confidence in the market.
All right. So reacting to a statement by IMF saying the economic policies in the country are too weak to boost the value of the naira, what's the way out of these?
No, I don't quite agree with the IMF on that. And we also need to be careful how we just allow the templates of IMF and World Bank to dictate the path or the trajectory of policy. We need to be extremely careful. Some of their policies are good, but some don't actually fit into our own context. So we need to be very discerning to know what will work here and what will not work. And we need to know how far some of their policies can go. Now, the IMF was talking about, excess liquidity, need to further tighten monetary policy, and so on and so forth. As we speak now, monetary policy rate is 18.75. How many countries have that level of interest rates in their economies? I know the implication of high interest rates for economic growth and for investment. Our CRR, which is cash reserve ratio, is 32.5. And what that means is that for every 100 million naira worth of deposit that goes into the banking system, 32.5 million is sterilized with the central bank. So you can only do business with the balance. The Nigerian CRR is one of the highest in the world. So how much more tightening do you want to do? I mean, the industrialists are crying, all the people who borrowed money from the banks are crying about high interest rates. The financial system is not able to support the growth sectors of the economy because interest rates are very high. So there's a limit to which we can continue to adopt the template of some of these Western institutions. So I think what is important as far as this Forex is concerned.
All right, so Dr. Yusuf, prices of goods have...
I've been talking about the challenges of all been doing a lot to tackle in terms of security and so on. No, go ahead.
All right. Prices of goods have increased recently. I would like to know, what's the impact of, what impact is the exchange rate having on this?
No, the impact is very profound. The economy is highly sensitive to developments in the foreign exchange market. In fact, there is a strong correlation between exchange rate movements and inflation, because the economy is also heavily dependent on a lot of imports, unfortunately, because it doesn't have to be so, but that is the reality. If you look at our manufacturing sector, a lot of their raw materials are imported, a lot of the equipment are imported. If you look at even some of our services sector, most of the equipment they use are also imported. And unfortunately for us, petroleum products which we are supposed to be refining locally are also being imported. And it accounts for almost 30% of our import bill. And generally for any energy, import energy dependent economy, for any economy that is importing energy products at this time, it's a lot of pressure for that economy. Unfortunately, we fall into that category. Because ideally, we should be benefiting a lot more from the high oil prices globally. But unfortunately, we have become a victim of high oil price because we have not governed our oil and gas sector properly. So a lot of pressure of demand is also coming from the oil and gas sector. So when you feed all of this into the price, because all of these people are going for foreign exchange. And the more you have a depreciation, the more it is costly for them to bring these things in, and these things feed through the general price level. So that is the connection or the nexus between the exchange rate and inflation.
All right. So because most of our approaches so far have been short-term, what long-term strategies will you suggest as the way out?
Well, the way out is what the government is doing. We need to stabilize the macroeconomic environment. And what I mean by macroeconomic environment is to ensure that we have stability in our exchange rate environment, which is part of the initiative that is on the table at the moment. We need to stabilize our inflation environment to ensure that we don't have very high inflation. We need to ensure that we manage our fiscal environment properly so that we are not running very high deficits. And some of the reforms that have taken place are also meant to address some of these macroeconomic conditions. Because you need a stable macroeconomic conditions to inspire the confidence of investors, whether they are local or whether they are foreign, whether they are portfolio investors or they are foreign direct investors. You need that stable macroeconomic environment. And the government is working towards that, to stabilize the exchange rate and also to ensure that there's reduction in inflation. The second very important point is to address investment climate issues. Because if you talk to entrepreneurs, apart from these macroeconomic issues, there are a whole lot of challenges they face in the investment environment. You know, challenges of infrastructure, of power, of cost of diesel, of high import duty, of the customs, of the ports, of all manner of non-state actors harassing businesses all over the place, and of insecurity. These are very serious investment climate issues that government needs to fix. And I'm hoping that they are doing something to fix a whole lot of these issues. So by the time you deal with the macroeconomic issues and we deal with the investment climate issues, we have investment growth. Because progress of an economy depends on how much we are able to attract investments. Not just foreign investment, even domestic investment. Because it is from investment that you can create employment.
Dr. Yusuf, are you there? All right, I've been speaking.
Those are some of, to ensure that we have long-term stability.
All right, I've been speaking with the Chief Executive Officer of the Center for the Promotion of Private Enterprise, Dr. Muda Yusuf. Dr. Yusuf, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
All right. So let's quickly talk about the reliance of Nigeria on crude oil sales, which is another factor. How much of an impact is this having on the system presently? Dr. Yusuf, did you get my question?
Yes, I'm with you. Can you come again?
All right. I'm talking about the reliance of Nigeria on crude oil sales, which is another factor. So I'm asking, how much of an impact is this having on the system presently?
No, crude oil sales is one of our low-hanging fruits. Especially now that we are talking about crude oil at almost getting close to $85 per barrel. It's a low-hanging fruit for us. All the oil-producing countries now, they are smiling. Their reserves are overflowing. They are making a lot of, their currencies are getting stronger. So it's something that we can leverage upon to solve a whole lot of these macroeconomic problems that we are facing. So that is why we should not spare any effort to ensure that we restore confidence in the oil and gas sector. so that the existing investors that are there, because unfortunately, many of the major investors have left because of insecurity, because of poor governance, and because of policy and regulatory challenges. Many of them have left. But we can still salvage the situation. So if we're able to move up, improve our oil production, the market is there. So it's going to, it could be a game changer for us. And I think the government is doing a lot, to turn the situation around. We already have the Petroleum Industry Act, which is a major policy instrument to support, more investment in that sector. The government has stepped up the issue, tackling insecurity and all these illegal activities in the Niger Delta area, which is also a major step forward. But unfortunately, even as we speak, we are not able to meet our OPEC quota. So it could have a very, very significant positive impact if we're able to get it right, the crude oil. And from there, we can leverage on that to now develop other sectors, to develop our infrastructure, to diversify the economy. Because you need money to do all these things. You need foreign exchange to do these things.
Dr. Yusuf.
And the fastest way...
Dr. Yusuf, what if we shut the parallel markets to address speculations on the Naira?
No, it's not possible to shut it down. How are you going to enforce that? No, you can't shut it down. I mean, if you shut them down, they just go underground. The only way to make them irrelevant is for us to be able to make the foreign exchange available at an exchange rate that we can support. That is it. If you know that if you walk into any bank, you get the foreign exchange at a given exchange rate, it could be 80, it could be 800, it could be 750, whatever it is. Let us come to a fair level of equilibrium where the gap between the parallel market and the official window will be as narrow as 5%. All over the world, they have parallel markets, but the margin is always very, very minimal. And the global standard for margin, the difference between the parallel and the official window is just about 5%. What we had under the previous dispensation in CBN was almost 60%. Right.
Thank you so much, Dr. Yusuf.
What is the margin at this time is about 10%.
Thank you so much, Doctor. We're out of time. I've been speaking with the Chief Executive Officer of the Center for the Promotion of Private Enterprises, Dr. Muda Yusuf. Thank you so much, sir, for always finding time to join us on the program. We sincerely appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Jumaka.
And thank you very much for watching. That marks the end of today's episode of Politics Tonight. But the conversation continues from here. Get in touch with us on Twitter at TVC News NG and at Olajumoke using the hashtag Politics Tonight. We're also on YouTube at youtube.com/TVC News Nigeria. I am Olajumoke Olatunji. Goodbye.
Designed to study in an excellent academic environment with access to modern facilities. Are you willing to study in a leading medical and health sciences university and graduate in record time? No internal or any other form of strike. Do you want to be equipped with the requisite skills needed in today's medical science and health science fields without breaking the bank? Introducing the next gen scholarship scheme of the University of Medical Sciences, UNIMED in Ondo City, Ondo State, Nigeria. The university is offering a 40% discount on school fees, meaning students can pay as low as 150,000 naira per academic session for those who gain admission into UNIMED in the 2022-2023, 2023-2024, and 2024-2025 academic sessions to study selected science and biological courses. For admissions, visit www.unimed.edu.ng. Call 0813 55 654. UNIMED, proudly Nigeria's first specialized medical and health sciences university.
Bye, Mom.
He's going to play in this weather. Why did you let him go? He might fall ill.
And if he doesn't go out for practice, how will he win more trophies? To protect our family from illness-causing germs during the rainy season, we We use Dettol soap every day.
Dettol with germ defense gives you protection. Raining season brings a lot of germs, and Dettol soap's germ defense protects you from up to 100 illness-causing germs. Dettol soap is endorsed by the Nigerian Medical Association. Be Dettol Show.
Get in on the action with Betano, your exciting destination for thrilling sports betting. Enjoy an award-winning experience with amazing betting options, cash out, and missions, as well as other features. Join now and get a welcome bonus of up to 100,000 Naira. Betano.ng. The game starts now.
Never miss a moment. Instant breaking news from all over the globe. Live streaming of your favorite programs delivered directly to you. Watch anytime from anywhere on your mobile or smart devices. Download the TVC News app today. Available on Google Play and Apple Store.
Nigeria's Niger Delta region, where the black gold continues to flow and fuel Africa's largest economy, where the line between wealth and poverty has never been thinner. Oil, gas, politics, development, and community issues all are highly valuable commodities in the Niger Delta. How do they combine, and how can they work together to spawn a new era in the Niger Delta? As he probes deep to analyze issues in the region from angles never before explored, inside the Niger Delta with Mamode Akuga, the authentic voice of Nigeria's oil-rich region.
At TVC News, wherever the big news story is happening, we're geared up to break it. TVC News, first with breaking news.
The average Nigerian adult grew up hearing that phrase. Some say Nigerians' electricity situation is like a game of hide and seek. The constant battle involving candlelight, noisy generators, and rechargeable flashlights. In more than 120 years, the Nigerian electricity sector has evolved from producing 60 kilowatts of electricity through several stages of government ownership to its eventual partial privatization. In 1972, the National Electric Power Authority, NEPA, took charge of generation, transmission, and distribution of electric power in Nigeria. The hope was that it will improve effectiveness while minimizing operational risks. At the time, it had a total generation capacity of about 6,200 megawatts from 2 hydro and 4 thermal power plants. The NEPA era never really lived up to expectation. This resulted in unstable and unreliable power supply in the country, with customers exposed to frequent power cuts and long periods of power outages. The industry was characterized by lack of maintenance of power infrastructure, outdated power plants, low revenue, high losses, power theft, non-cost reflective tariffs, underinvestment, inadequate infrastructure, and a poor organizational structure. Another major issue to look at is that an increase in Nigeria's total population has always not been matched by increase in power generation capacity. For instance, in 1988, available power was increased to 1,273 megawatts, but by 1992, the population had increased to about 80 million. The total available power was 3,000 megawatts. By 1999, only 19 out of the 79 existing power plants were operational, and an average of 28% of the installed capacity, that is 6,200 megawatts, was generated daily. Between 1991 and 1999, there was little or no investment in electricity infrastructure, leaving more than 90 million Nigerians in total darkness. Challenges faced in the NEPA era called for a reform of the power sector with the 2005 Electric Power Sector Reform (EPSR) Act, in addition to the Power Holding Company of Nigeria (PHCN). At the start of the privatization exercise in 2010, electricity supply in Nigeria had improved to an average of 3,825 megawatts, while the Nigerian Bulk Electricity Trading PLC (MBET) was established to take off electric power from generation companies. By July 2014, the total installed capacity of generating plants increased to 8,876 megawatts, but with an available capacity of about 3,795 megawatts. According to the Energy Progress Report 2022, released by Tracking SDG 7, Nigeria has the lowest access to electricity globally, with about 92 million persons out of the country's 200 million population lacking access to power supply. This, it said, was in contrast with Kenya and Uganda's progress in electrification, due to their annual increases of more than 3 percentage points between 2010 and 2020.
Just like a stubborn ailment that has continued to defy treatment, Nigerian power sector, which has undergone different levels of diagnosis and treatment, appears to be resistant to numerous interventions by both the public and private sector. Now, the question that comes to one's mind is, what really is the issue? When is the country going to get it right with its electricity supply?
Despite its reforms, has the nation made any significant progress in the power sector? I go this experts talking. Professor of Energy and Electricity Law at the University of Lagos, UNILAG, Professor Yemi Oke, insists the sector has not recorded significant growth due to foundational factors, as the sector was wrongly privatized.
We're not heading in any direction. We're even receding instead of accelerating in our progress in the power sector. And I have to be honest with Nigerians. After privatization, how much have we been able to add to the megawatts that were on ground? We've actually lost megawatts as against adding. The entities that are the major players in this sector, those who bought the infrastructure, how are they faring in terms of business? I can tell you for free, 93 to 95% of the discos are technically insolvent. Most of them, if not all, most of them are under receivership. That paints a very gloomy picture of what has happened in the power sector. On the flip side, this is a regime that seems to spend the most in a supposedly privatized power sector. So why are we not getting it? Is it that we're ready to progress as a nation and fix that, or we're just deceiving ourselves and we continue to struggle? It's much more than just privatizing for the sake of privatizing.
On the contrary, Executive Director, Research and Advocacy for Association of Nigerian Electricity Distributors, Chief Sunday Oduton, says the sector has seen growth and can only get better.
I would say that it has been a very interesting journey, but I can confirm that we've moved forward. We are not where we are supposed to be, and there are so many reasons why we're where we are and why we're not where we ought to be. But in terms of whether or not we have made progress, I can say that on the part of the government, federal government, on the part of the sectoral participants, I can say that yes, a lot of progress has been made. If you look at the generation of electricity after the 1st of November 2013, compare what we have today, yes, we've inched forward, but like I said, it is a journey. So that journey is a long journey, and it's a gradual journey. So many things are involved in that journey. With a little bit of patience and better focus, we should be able to surmount all the problems that we have in the sector.
Rather than rely solely on the federal government to address the electricity access gap, some states, notably Lagos, Edo, Kaduna states, argued for full decentralization of the Nigerian electricity supply sector. On the 17th of March 2023, ex-President Muhammadu Buhari assented to the constitutional amendment allowing states and the country to generate, transmit, and distribute electricity in areas not covered by national grid. In just a few days in office, President Bola Tinubu signed the 2023 electricity bill into law. The law provides a framework for the improvement of access to electricity in rural, unserved, underserved, semi-urban and urban areas. Professor Yemi Oke believes though the new law is the way to go, it should not be celebrated yet, as it will be a huge burden on state.
State government, of course, there's a kind of shifting of institutional responsibilities to state governments, clearly. So nobody's going to call the federal government to question for not providing electricity. Why? Because with the recent alteration of the Constitution, it clearly shows that, one, in respect of areas covered by a national grid, state government can legislate in respect of transmission, generation, and distribution. Similarly, in respect of areas not covered by a national grid, state government can legislate and make laws or policies in respect of generation, transmission, and distribution. So whichever way you look at it, states are now in this kind of challenge that Nigerians will now have to be asking questions from the state government as to why and why not, why they're not having electricity. The federal government seems to have extricated itself from the blame, shifting it to the state government now. Of course, the federal government might still continue to undertake policy and strategic steps or issues in the power sector. But now, effectively, the states also are now taxed maximally. And the reality is that it's hugely expensive. It's costly to generate a megawatt. It's a lot of money that is involved. Even if, for instance, one of the analysis we did was to look at Ogun State and say Ogun State should generate some 14,000 megawatts to effectively power its development at the rate that, based on the rate at which the state is growing. And if that is the case, the state government would need some 47 trillion to be able to do that, meaning it will take like 17 years to even be able to generate that, assuming it diverts all its revenues strictly to generating electricity, which is not realistic. So do they have current capacity? So if it generates, can they afford to pay a kind of cost-reflective tariff, a tariff that will make the investor to stay in business? In certain states in the north, in the east, in the south, in the west.
What has happened is a welcome development. What that will simply do is that it will open up the sector to more players, more participants. It will create more competition, healthy competition. It will enable our states as federation units in a federal republic to also get involved. So it won't be about, I can't do anything. Say a governor saying, there's nothing I can do because the electricity generation, transmission and distribution is in the exclusive list. What they have done simply is that they brought it down into the concurrent list. That's what has happened. And that will help new investors, new players. But remember, when you talk about investment, you should be thinking about many other things that goes with it. You can't talk about foreign direct investment if you don't look at the enabling environment. You can't talk about enabling environment if you don't look at the issue of security. And it's not just about security, you have to even look at our financial sector. Because, for instance, Nigerians need to be metered. We as ANET have said it many times in the past, that the meter manufacturers or meter suppliers in Nigeria ought to be given loan at a single-digit rate. Single-digit. One, to enable them to bring this thing in large to produce EMAs. Even we should get to a point in this country where in critical sectors, the government should look at giving them tax holidays. So if you do that, it will help the economy, it will help the nation. Tax breaks, that happens in other countries. You have to give incentive to businessmen. That is the only way they can perform optimally. The states don't have to be rich to be able to do things or to be able to get more innovative. Innovation is not about how much do I have today. You can also think outside the box and see how much you can begin to generate more than what you were generating before in terms of IGR.
In a state like Benue, the Commissioner for Rural Development and Cooperatives, Engineer Victor Okaha, says the law is far from being a burden to the states, but rather a way to fix some issues within the states.
I don't see an offloading of a burden from the federal government to the states. In fairness to the federal government and for the good of the nation, the bill, the amendments that took off some items on the exclusive list and put it in the inclusive list, if there is any list like that, is a welcome development for the states. Remember that there were some regional power generation corporations in Plateau. There is something that exists like that. They are generating electricity and distributing it for a long time, and it's been a huge success. So if states look into power generation as a possible way of investing, it will be a veritable way of generating income for the states. And it solves some of the problems. As a state, for example, Benue State has invested in power distribution assets like lines, power lines, poles, transformers, and several accessories. It will interest you that an assessment was done about the volume of investment Benue has put into these assets to the tune of over 11 billion. That this was before privatization. Yeah, many times people are saying that the state should give them transformer, come and do electricity for us. Actually, it wasn't the duty of the states to do this. But because states would like to show that they are a responsible government, they go to do this. Normally, the power distribution companies were supposed to refund states the monies they use in doing this. That has never been done. With this bill that has allowed states to invest in this area, states will take on the role of doing that investment, and it will also give them the benefit of generating revenue. You are aware that when we go and do electrification of a suburb or a neighborhood, as soon as we will do the electrification project and power comes on, the JEDC will go there and begin to collect revenues, reaping where they never sow. With this bill, the states can also go on to collect revenue for power generation they do.
I can say it's a welcome development because then the center is overloaded. It's overloaded. There is high time to decentralize some issues. I can give you an example of Kano. If you go to Kano, they generate their energy, they generate themselves. And if you go to Kano, you will see this issue of there's no power here, there's no power there, because they control it themselves. So there is efficiency in monitoring of what is on ground.
Actually, the issue of electricity has become a worrisome issue in this country. And definitely, if every state will be allowed to generate their own electricity and control the issue that has to do with electricity, it will be good for this country, better than having all these different companies from various places.
It's a way forward to the state. If the state can generate their own electricity, it's a welcome development. Like here in Makurdi, we rely on federal government. Sometimes they will say there's a problem in Enugu, Makurdi will be in darkness. Sometimes they say there's a problem in Jos, Makurdi will be in darkness. But if state can generate their own electricity and distribute, it's a welcome development. There's nothing wrong if the state can afford it.
Lagos, Nigeria's digital epicenter and technology hub, has been pursuing its megacity ambitions. Though Lagos has since made plans to bring reliable power supply to its population of more than 21 million people, some business owners are wailing.
I think throughout for like 3 days this week, no power supply at all. And the tariff is even quite high, and no power. And yet the tariff is still high. They should work on the tariff. It's too high. It's too high. For business owners, we are really suffering. It's not funny. Because, you know, by the time you start changing prices, you can't, somebody buying, they are not ready to listen to you. You tell them government, they expect you to have a generator. Like, you don't even run a business in Nigeria without having a standby power supply.
If I said that I should talk about the electricity here in Shona Ike, it's very, very bad. Our work is very, very slow here because we don't have enough light to use. If we want to use generator,
then if we buy, assuming we buy 1,000, we can use it for 2 months. Then, but now we can't use it. Maybe it's a week.
Experts point out how states can afford to generate, transmit, and distribute electricity, saying the success of this initiative will largely depend on the commitment and readiness of state governments to establish their independent electricity markets and create a strong and independent regulatory agency to oversee implementation.
We need to now restructure the entirety of the power architecture of the country. Even if you give states power to make laws in respect of areas covered by a national grid, at best they will try to put in place, like Lagos state government is doing, a law, the enabling law that will enable them to have their own institutional arrangements to be able to license, so that they can license entities and companies to come and generate, transmit, and distribute. States will need to put in place appropriate structure to be able to attract serious minded investors. Not just any kind of investor like the federal government did, that is causing the problems that we're all experiencing now. State government will need to get serious minded, technologically strong, financially buoyant investors.
The regulator, Nigerian Electricity Regulatory Commission, NEC, they have also done a lot in the past 10 years